Hello, everyone. This is Cassandra afternoon, but had other business here today from way up in a holler in eastern Kentucky. Yeah, this is your, let me just say it, your hillbilly trans woman. Yeah, this is the let me see, hillbilly trans woman. And I hate using those terms, but we've got to stand up and fight. We've got to stand up and actually push back against what we see when you start connecting all the dots and you start seeing where this stuff is headed. And that doesn't mean it's going to go that way, but at least you got to start standing up and doing something about it, right? You can't just roll over, play dead, and say, "Oh no, it's going to be all right. It'll be all right." Those days are past, folks. There are too many warning signs. Too many warning signs. So let me give you an update first, though. I just took my mom over this morning to Pikeville Medical Center for her appointment with her kidney specialist. And it's a doctor who is from the Middle East, a well-spoken man, really good English. So I couldn't pronounce his name. It was really an interesting name. I'd never seen that one before. So I asked where he was from, and he told me the Middle East. So um, always good to interact with people from different cultures, right? You always learn so much, and you gain so much respect for other people when you listen to them. Surprising how that works, right? Right. We don't need to be combative with everybody who's different from us. Honestly, we don't. So anyway, I took mom over. Some of her numbers from her lab work yesterday on her blood work and on her urinalysis were concerning. They were high in some areas, but it turns out that she's been consistently running in those areas kind of high, except for the filtration rate. That one was 18.6. That is stage 4 kidney failure. But she's been in stage 4 kidney failure since January of 2021. So it's been consistently in that area down there in stage 4 for 4 years now. We have to make sure it doesn't go down. If it goes below 15, then we have to consider other options, which would include dialysis and stuff like that. So right now, though, he doesn't want to change anything. We did talk about her, the swelling in her feet and legs, which is not all the way up her leg, not up past her knee. It's not up and past the calf really too much. And so he looked at that, checked it out, and said he doesn't really want to do much medicinally, to basically give an extra load on her kidneys and liver and stuff like that. He doesn't want to do that unless if it were dramatic, though, the swelling in her legs. We know it's connected to the kidney function and all that. But if it got really dramatic, it went up to her knees and all that and got really swollen really badly, then he would consider something, but he wants her to come back in 3 months. But otherwise, she's fine. She can't really communicate too clearly. Well, I mean, she communicates clearly. Let me just put it like this. She has a hard time hearing and seeing. And so, and especially if someone is foreign, and they've got a slight accent, it makes it even more difficult for her. But I mean, his English was excellent. He did a great job. So I thanked him using the language of Islam, Assalamu alaikum. So out of respect. And so, I know some of these terms. I know a lot of stuff from a lot of things, unsurprisingly, actually. But so we had a good conversation. The only thing he suggested was kind of cutting down on the salt intake for mom. Her memory function is not good. She didn't recognize her daughter yesterday in the lab because Edna, my sister, and mom's daughter is a phlebotomist there, and she didn't recognize Edna. And I know that had to hurt. I mean, that hurt Edna a lot. I can know that you can tell it and see it and sense it in her voice and everything. But she doesn't recognize me many times either. But I'm all right with that. I just want to make sure that she's in good health and that everything that she has is taken care of. That she's in a good place. So that's my primary objective, my primary goal for being back here in the hollers of Eastern Kentucky is to take care of them. And that by them I mean my mom, sister, and brother. Sister is 10 years younger than me. I'm the oldest of six, but she has been at home all of her life. Um, and she's currently has to get around in a wheelchair. And so it's a challenge for her. I've got her to go to the doctor tomorrow. That's Irma. She's been doing really well, though. I mean, she loves getting up and she sweeps the floor. She does some of the dishes. Actually, she rinses off the dishes and stacks them neatly in the sink. And it's just, I love it. So, I mean, it's wonderful. She gets up and does things. And I bet she has been watching cartoons all of her life. She probably knows every single one of them, all of them. But she still finds them entertaining every time she watches one, and which is great. I mean, that's what she does. That's what she likes to do. And she sits in her room and watches lots of TV. Then she gets out in her wheelchair and comes in the kitchen or living room. And, sometimes there are things I have to take care of for her. Lots of times, actually, she can't fix her own food. So I do that. And I do that for mom and Gideon and my brother. So those things are what keep my day active here. Gideon, my brother, he's pushing along, doing everything he possibly can. And I know it wears him out. I know that he struggles with a lot of this, but both of his lungs have issues now. Supposed to go back for another scan sometime, lung scan, and as well as the potential or possibility of a blockage in one of the arteries in his heart. So, and he's younger than me, and that's worrisome. He actually worries me more than any of the others. And then my cousin, Lois, doesn't live here in this house. She has her own place. And so I check on her ever so often. Basically, it's about every day or every other day. And today I went up there after we were coming back from Pikeville with mom and go up there and I go in and check on her. And she had fallen, scraped her knee really badly and bruised up a wrist bone pretty badly, but she seemed to be all right. She didn't have any other concussive type issues or anything like that I could tell. She was coherent and everything was good. But I did have to fix her TV. Somehow she gets the TV turned on and off. I'm not quite sure how it happens, but or what happens. But I love being in the place where I can actually help family back here. Very, very, very thankful for that, to be here, to be needed here, because that actually gives me purpose beyond just the love I have for my children. They're all adults, and the love I have for my grandchildren who are quickly becoming adults. All 8 of them? No, not all at once, but they're different ages, obviously. But I've got like 3 are going to be all 18 here. One's 18 now, and 2 more is going to be 18 at the first of the year. It's like, oh my goodness. Anyway, family's great. I hear from different ones all the time, frequently. My family up in Ohio, I've got a lot of family up there, first cousins a generation removed, and second cousin. Well, a lot of family from here left and went up to Ohio and went to Detroit and went all over the place, and they all got away. And they're doing really well, and I'm happy for all of my family everywhere they are. Got other cousins down in Kentucky, and I love all of my family, love them, and as one cousin tells me all the time, blood is thicker than all the differences that we might have, and she and I have a few differences. Yeah, I get it. And we were raised the same, essentially, at Fort Sills. Mom was Southern Baptist. I'm not quite sure what her family actually were doing in that regard. I don't know, but I went to the First Baptist Church of Fort Sills, but my dad was also Church of God. So I go from this calm, cool, collected Baptist church, and we would alternate ever so often and go up to the Church of God. And that one there was like a high energy, high impact bands, drums, horns, people up and dancing and running around and having a good time. And so I come by it naturally, I suppose, of having experiences with some charismatic, apostolic kind of people. They would not have considered themselves to be charismatic, apostolic, or Pentecostal, but I actually went to work for one in Texas. I worked for 6.5 years for a church in Texas, one of the televangelists that you may or may not have heard of, which is Kenneth and Gloria Copeland. And in Trump's first term, they were actually on that faith advisory board. I don't know that they are still on it. He's getting up there in age, Kenneth is, and he's in his mid-80s right now, I would suspect. So I'm not sure if he's that active in all of that, but I know that his family runs the big church down there in Texas, Eagle Mountain Church, Kenneth Copeland Ministries. And they have ministry all around the world, everywhere, from Russia to Africa to you name it. I'm not sure if they're into Korea just yet. They weren't when I was there, but that was a long time ago. That was 30 years ago. But anyway, so I come by a little bit of understanding about what Christian nationalism is because I've been involved in it. I come by a little understanding of what creationism is within the Bible and the Ark Encounter stuff and all of that I rail against all the time, and for good reason. But I come by all these things having been there, done that, trying to find answers for me and my family. And those are the reasons why I rail against so many things like that, because I know I've got experience with some of these things. Yeah, exactly. So when I see someone like Doug Wilson, who is a reverend or a pastor, I'm not quite sure what title he uses for himself, but he is not accountable to anyone. He has no church body over which has any kind of authority over him. He's not accountable to anyone. His license for himself or his calling for himself is from himself. And the people who associate with him, his associate pastors, he and his associate pastors have made it clear their stand on all kinds of issues. And recently, the CNN did an interview with all of them. Now, there were some shocking things that were said by this pastor out there to most people. Doesn't surprise me, though, because I know something about them. I know what they want to do. I used to spout some of the crap that they say. Yeah, I've been there, done that. Been on that side of the line. Prayed for it to happen. Yeah, I mean, my goodness. Been there, done it. Anti-abortion, I was big time into that. I mean, if anybody even mentioned the word abortion or something like that, and they wanted to do something political, I was involved in the Republican Party as a county chairperson for the county I lived in Texas. And if any candidate came along and it said anything about abortion, just even in passing, they never got my approval to do anything politically. Yeah, I was that extreme. So yeah, I've been there, done that. I know what this stuff is. I've seen it. I've been there. I've contributed to it even. I helped get, and Lord forgive me, whomever, forgive me, but I helped George Bush become governor of Texas in his first term, for his first time around in the early 90s. Came up and gave a speech for me and in the county in which I was in as the Republican chairperson. He came up and gave a little speech for me. He pulled up there was a black and gray limousine, but I went out to greet him. You know, he's the son of, at that time, he was the son of an ex-president or president, and he was making himself known, you know, and coming around to talk with people and all of that. But he pulled up in that limousine. It was a beat up old limousine. He was the driver. He didn't have a driver. He drove the limousine and got out of the driver's seat. And I'm going, okay. And then he came in and talked, and I remember thinking, Oh my God. This guy wants to be governor of Texas. I said, Lord help us. He was running against Ann Richards. He beat her. And it was just, I was so dismayed that he lacked any kind of refinement. He was just rough around the edges like I am now. He was just rough around the edges. I know I'm not all that and everything too. I get it. I know that. But I know when other people are that too. And I had, let me see, Kay Bailey Hutchison. She was a senator from Texas. Well, she wasn't when I was there. She came up and gave a talk for me to persuade the party and persuade the county to support her in her bid to run for senator from Texas. And she happened to come up on my oldest daughter's birthday. So she actually talked with my oldest daughter and wished her happy birthday. And I'm not sure my daughter remembers all of that, but she was real young. She was like 6, 5 or 6. But I had her there for all this stuff. So anyway, I say all that because I'm familiar with these things. I'm familiar with the kind of thought patterns that arise from this. I'm familiar with the long strategic plan that goes into all of these things and how they have thought for years and fought for years to do what they now have within their grasp to be able to do. And it is deeply concerning to me whenever I see Doug Wilson and his pastors, associate pastors, and families there in that church in Moscow, Idaho, say things like, we should repeal the 19th Amendment, the amendment that gives women the right to vote, and that the husband in the house should be the one voting for the whole house, that no one else should be voting, that he makes the decisions for the whole house, who to vote for. If there's any kind of differences of opinion, well, in this faith system, the women submit to the men. And if there are differences of opinion, even though he might want to have a conversation, he's the one, regardless of how the woman feels, he's going to make the decision to vote how he wants to vote. He's going to try to persuade her to go along with it, but he doesn't really care because, the women are submissive. And the family, when they came to talk, or the woman and the husband, when they talked, she made it clear that she's very submissive to her husband. And it's supposed to be like a biblical submissive stuff, but that's just a load of crap, folks. That's just a load of crap. No person, no one, no man, no woman should have authority like that over another human being. Period. It's horrible. It's disgusting. You know what the next step back from that is? Since the woman can't make any major decisions in the family anymore, all they are is, like they said in that little video clip, they're the ones who bring other people into the world. Oh my God. And it doesn't take any kind of, special talent to do that. Won't you go ahead and try it? I haven't. I'd love to. I could get, but I'm 66 years old. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. I'm too old for that. But you can get a uterine implant, and it can happen. Yes, you can. It sure as heck can. Science is there already. But that's what they think of women. The next step in that is ensuring that they do not control any of the finances. They do not have any credit or banking stuff in their names. That's the way it was, 40, 50 years ago here in the U.S. Yeah, that's the way it was. There were some women with those abilities, those access to banking and stuff like that, because they had been left a lot of money. But for the most part, Americans in this country, women didn't have that kind of authority, didn't have that kind of privilege or right. This church wants to put it all back like that. One of those associate pastors even said that, yes, he's all for repealing the 19th Amendment because, as he put it, the atomization of our culture today. and he thinks it's wrong. And I'm not sure exactly what he meant by saying that was the atomization of it, that maybe it's just so dispersed. And so let's see, how would you use a word like that and mean it in some kind of context around voting? Well, there are too many freedoms. You can do whatever you want within reason. You still can't yell fire in a theater, and you still can't yell bomb on an airplane. You'd have to be an idiot to do that anyway, right? So that's what he meant by atomization, that people can do what they have every right to do as human beings. So why is this such a big problem to me? Well, let me see if I can pull up some news story here. And, well, I'll just go ahead and talk some about it. There's several different stories, and some of them are coming from some sites. I read sites all over the place on different types of views and things. So I know what they're planning to do. Doug Wilson has already opened up he's planted a church in D.C., planted one of his churches. He's got more than 150 of them scattered around the world that he's planted and created and set up and established, okay? They're around the country. As a matter of fact, one of them was in Tennessee, and that's where Pete Hegseth and his family moved so they could be close to this teaching, to this type of thought. I understand that. I did it once too. Actually uprooted my family and took us all to Texas. Ostensibly, it was to go down there and go to seminary school, but I got down there and found out all about Kenneth Copeland, and I decided to go out there to work at an Eagle Mountain in Fort Worth, Tarrant County. I ended up working there the whole time I was in Texas, 6.5 years. Good people at heart. I mean, nothing wrong with them at all. Their beliefs are screwed up. They believe in prosperity as something Jesus would teach. And I'm telling you that there's nothing in what Jesus has taught that was prosperity based. They say he was a carpenter and he had to be the best because he's the Son of God. And that may be true, and he may have made some money doing that, but he was funded by some of the women. Uh-oh, don't say that out loud, right? Yeah, it was the women who helped fund Jesus's ministry. And he wasn't averse to having women in leadership roles either. This church will not have or allow a woman to be in leadership in their church, and they will tell you that. They did in that little clip. I'm not going to have women in leadership roles. It's biblical, he said. Well, the first time that a preacher was sent out from Jesus to go send a message to someone or a group of people, there was a woman. Yay, look at that. Anyway, so this Christian nationalism of Doug Wilson is dangerous. It's a theocracy. You know what another word for theocracy is? Well, just kind of give an example. You can take other religions have the same kind of thing. They have the same kind of power dynamic taking place. Okay, such as the Shia faith, the branch of Islam, other than Sunni. They're two competing views of what Muhammad actually meant. But the Shia side of it, and the Sunnis too, for that matter, but they do have a theocratic nationalist side. It's theocracy, and the Shia side is who runs everything in Iran. And they control the entire government, even though they aren't government. They're the religious body that oversees the government, makes decisions on behalf of the government. If they don't like something the government is doing, the Ayatollah can come in and change it. That system is exactly what Doug Wilson and other Christian nationalists in this country want to do here in the United States. They don't care to have the title of president or vice president, but they want to be the ones to pull all the strings, to be the marionette controller over here, running the sticks and strings over everybody in government. and academia and in the country and in the states and in the cities and communities where they reside. They want them to be exactly what they believe. And if you're surprised by that, I don't know, you have to kind of look around, kind of look at the evidence, look at this point here and this point here, and you can see a trajectory of things occurring the way they want it to go, folks. It's there. You can look in the Department of Defense, and I rail on Pete Hegseth a lot because I honestly think this man is unfit to be a dog catcher. And so, particularly since he's going after women in authority, he's doing what the church wants. He's not saying it out loud. He's not being very specific about some certain things, but you can see that the patterns are there. They match the teachings of this church. The Kirker Church, or Church Kirker. Kirker just means church, by the way, if you don't know. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the power dynamic of Pete Hegseth creating a monthly prayer service inside the walls of the Pentagon, bringing people in there to preach that mostly come from his church. The very first one was from leaders in his church. Why do people attend those things? You would think that if people didn't want to hear all of that, if they didn't want to go down that road with that they would not show up. But there's a power dynamic at play. You have the Secretary of Defense promoting this service in the Department of Defense and DOD, and people cannot help but think that if you are seen there, you might stand a chance of making it past his screening so that you could be promoted. Whenever he removed Vice Admiral Davids from the Naval Academy, she was the superintendent, had been in that position for 18 months, was doing a great job, but Hegseth removed her. And he put in a Marine Corps general, class of 91. And I don't have a problem with the Marine Corps general at all. I don't know him. I don't know of his politics. I don't know any of those things. You can guarantee that if Pete Hegseth recommended him, that there's probably something in there we need to be concerned about. But from everything I can tell, good person, good leader, leading the Naval Academy, and that's great. It's never been led by a Marine officer before, and that's good. There have been commandants who were Marines, but not superintendents. So she got kicked to the Pentagon, and the Marine general took over, or I think the change of command is either this week or it was last Friday. I don't know. It's coming up really soon or already happened. But so that change in command puts her in the Pentagon and him back over there, back in charge of the Naval Academy. And he will not at this point, at least, tell you that the reason he removed her was because of the teachings he knows from his church. He's very devout. Very devout. He hasn't denied any of it. He's not going to even comment on it. They say that's been told that she's been moved into a really good position in the Pentagon where she has some access to senior leaders in the military and all of that. But the role is essentially one of an advisor to the warfighters, which is where Pete happens to think women belong as secretaries or support staff or advisors for. He removed Lisa Franchetti, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, as the chief of naval operations, simply because she was a woman, and he doesn't think women ought to be leading any of these things, any of these warfighting organizations. He actually believes that women do not belong in the military, even though he will tell you that, yeah, I'm all right with that. They've been in battle and they combat and all this kind of stuff, but he doesn't want them there. He doesn't want them there. He wants them at home, making babies, fixing the food, addressing the household issues. So we've got a serious problem confronting us that we need to do something about question is, what can we do? How can we stop this? Well, I got some bad news for you. It's going to be hard to do. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try. We shouldn't get out. Protesting riles up the base of the opposition party, riles them up all over the place, whatever. It doesn't accomplish the goal, though, but it does put, if you get the whole country, you get a lot of people out there protesting across the whole nation, then it becomes really viable and visible, and it can do some things then. But you've got to have a massive, massive operation taking place with that. And it has to be from the ground roots up. It has to be from ground level up. It can't be funded by outside organizations. And why do I say that? Because if it is, you're going to find yourself on Fox News, and they're going to run you down, and half the country are going to say, look, they're just funded by Soros or somebody like that, or Beto O'Rourke or whatever. They're going to kind of find all kinds of reasons to think that this was not organic. And the only way you're going to be able to pull it off is you have to make sure that you're not getting any kind of funding from any of those organizations that might want to fund you, because it will be used against you as a weapon. Other things you've got to do too. One is you don't want to be throwing rocks and bricks at ICE. That'll get you picked up, put in jail, and I get it, that you're fighting the good fight, but not with a rock and a brick. If you're out there doing that kind of thing, I'm going to be the one to say, oh, come on over here. I'm going to show you where they are, because this person picked up a brick and hit that car and broke the windshield. I don't want that on us. There are ways to do this stuff that gets the message across, but it has to be massive. We have to get up and do something about all of this. And I honestly don't know that it will succeed for at least the next year and a half or two. But we have to pay attention to what this administration is doing. And they're doing it in plain sight. They're telling you exactly what they want to do and how they want to go about doing it and where they're headed with it. They test things. They'll put something out there and they'll see, oh, that didn't get too much of a pushback. The court system said this about it. We changed and adapted this way, and we're going to do it another way, but we're still going to do what we wanted to do. And so we take it to the next level, and we keep pushing and pushing and pushing against the boundaries of constitutional authority. And right now, it's in serious jeopardy, folks. And that's not to say that there are things in that Constitution that do not need to be changed. There are. There are things in that Constitution that need to be revisited, as Jefferson said that we should do. Yeah, he said that in a letter to his friend Samuel Kercheval. I think it was July the 12th of 1816. In the letter, he basically said, why would you force me to wear the coat of my youth when I know so much more now? We've learned so much more now. We've come further in terms of our science and technology and knowledge, and the people today are different than the people yesterday. So why would you force me to wear the coat of my youth when it no longer fits? That was Jefferson, paraphrased somewhat, in his letter to his friend Samuel Kercheval. After he told him, don't tell anybody this, because Jefferson didn't have a very strong character, in my opinion. And my opinion basically says it's worthless to most people, but I consider Jefferson to be a weak-kneed, lily-livered person who was a hypocrite. I agree with Martha Washington, who wouldn't talk to him for 10 years because she considered him a hypocrite. But I consider him a hypocrite because he knew slavery was bad. He knew it was immoral. He knew it was unethical. And the only two reasons why he didn't ban it or didn't push for its removal in the Constitution, the federal Constitution, was because he didn't want his friends in Virginia to think poorly of him. And the other reason was that, he happened to have some good friends there. Hold on. Hey. Oh, okay. So Yeah, I mean, that Jefferson I considered to be just he didn't have strength of character to stand up for what he believed in. He backs down. He was afraid that if he set the if he freed the black population in the country, if he pushed to do that, then they would rise up and kill all the white people for enslaving them, which it was a valid concern, but that should not have been a reason, and that was one of his reasons. It should not have been a reason not to do something about it. He knew it was wrong, but he didn't have the strength of character to actually do something about it, and he waited until after he died to free him, because then nobody could do anything about it. They couldn't talk to him, and he couldn't hear them. Yeah, and likewise, I've always admired Alexander Hamilton. He was an abolitionist. He was opposed to slavery. He was very vocal about it. But when it came down to establishing a federal government to give it the power and strength that it needed to be able to take care of this colony, these bunch of colonies here, he was willing to compromise on the issue of slavery in order to bring the states in. So, as much as I admire Alexander Hamilton's thinking, a very smart person, a polymath, no doubt, just like Jefferson, both polymaths, he too lacked the character to do what was right, that he knew was right, but he yielded to pressures to create the United States with a flawed system, with a flawed constitution, and he knew it. Hamilton and Madison and Jefferson, they were initially opposed to the Bill of Rights. The Constitution was made effective on 1787? And it took until 1791 and 92 for the Bill of Rights to be put in place. There was opposition to them because they didn't want the federal government hamstrung by those things. That's why it took so long. That's why it wasn't in there to start out with. But they were willing to compromise to get it there. Thank goodness for putting the Bill of Rights in, right? Because otherwise, who knows what the shape of this country would have been. But that first federal republic of the United States was stuck to that interpretation of the Constitution until the Civil War. And after that, everything changed. Everything changed after that. After that, you began to see things like due process put into the Constitution as an amendment. You began to see the 13th and 14th Amendments. You began to see all of those things put in there after the Civil War. They would not have done it before that because it didn't fit the Federalist mold of thinking. So there's some things that we could change in the way that Constitution is written and how it is created. And that 3/5 compromise that has since obviously been taken out, well, it was there, but it didn't include women. Women weren't part of it, but black men were. 3/5. 3/5. At least the black men were worth something because the women weren't considered to be worth of anything under this Constitution, under that Constitution. And it took a long time until the 19th Amendment was actually passed and approved. And now we have people wanting to go back to that period of time, stripping away women's rights to vote, to own property, to do all of those kind of things without the consent of a man. And if that doesn't piss off half of this country, whether you're conservative or liberal or whatever your views are, that's what these people want. And you think it's not in the White House. Well, J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance, who legally changed his name to Vance because it was Bowman, and I'm going to use his legally recognized name because I hope people would do me that same honor. And so, even though I know his name was J.D. Bowman, but he legally changed it. So, and just as I have legally changed everything about me, but I'll respect JD for that. But he's Opus Dei, converted to Catholicism, particularly Opus Dei, with Peter Thiel. Opus Dei is the militant branch of Catholicism, folks. It's the same kind of thinking and rationale that motivates Doug Wilson, Pete Hegseth, the Heritage Foundation with Kevin Roberts. You had Hegseth, who was advising on certain things at the Heritage Foundation. You've got all of these different thinkers and talkers and writers who created things in Project 2025. They're over in the Trump administration, even though Trump said, no, I don't know anything about that. He may not have known anything about it because he doesn't read. Everybody knows he doesn't read anything. You got to put it down into like one line. That whole document, you better put it in one line. But that's where we are. And we've got to stand up against this stuff. Otherwise, you're going to lose even the opportunity to make corrections to things we know need to be fixed. And that is the real problem. So I've been at it for 40-some minutes right now, so I'm going to get off and come back tonight. You can come and join me at 6 p.m. Eastern time. I'll do it again.